talk about nature sitting together under a tree.
Events as spaces to experience and experiment with different forms of human culture.
How can we create an event which brings people across these movements together and gets them to see the power?
Hello, and welcome to the Permaculture Vine podcast, where we talk about permaculture education, careers, and business. I'm your host, Cormac Harkin, and today we have two guests from Gathering of Tribes. So we have Audrey Fillon, is that right?
That's as good as it gets for non-French speakers.
And we have Victor Vorski. Welcome, guys. Thanks very much for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, so we'll just do a round of introductions. If you like, just for a quick 30 seconds, the minute introduction, just who you are. Audrey, do you want to go first there?
Sure. As the woman in the room, I will. I'm Audrey. I've been living in Portugal for almost 5 years now. My background is in health system strengthening in the international development sector, and in 2020 with the COVID crisis and many other life situations, I transitioned to grassroots projects and initiatives, mostly based in Portugal, and shifted my focus from systems level work to ecosystem restoration and community building. And that's how and where I first encountered the ideas and the people of the regenerative space. And I've been working with Victor on birthing this initiative, the Gathering of Tribes, for the past year, more or less. And we're now, really gearing up for the next event coming up in September.
Great stuff. And Victor?
Hi, I'm Victor. Where do I start? I guess I've ended up in this movement through coming through the village building side. So I've been working remotely for 18, almost 20 years, so longer than many people. And that kind of took me on the path of, wait, why am I living here in this big city? I was in Tokyo at the time in this shoebox apartment where I could be living anywhere, moving out of town. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Nature. Oh, wait, this is a different culture. It's nice people, but it's not the culture environment I'm looking for. And wait, I don't have a wife. So I had to go back to the big city. And yeah, I've been on this journey for over 10 years, and that brought me to discovering new ways of learning, new ways of building organizations, everything around the regenerative movement, a bit of permaculture. And it's made me realize how many amazing movements there are, reinventing different parts of society, whether it's money or learning or well-being or agriculture. There is somebody there who's thinking and reinventing it. But after a while, I started becoming frustrated that these people are not talking to each other. The people who reinvented learning are not talking to the people reinventing economy, are not talking to the people reinventing agriculture. And I was like, it would be really great because there is a lot of wisdom and value for interconnection. I wish people connected more and better. Also, I saw that we really need to work much more ecosystemically, that a lot of people are small or struggling, not feeling their full power. But then when you look widely, there's so many people trying to do things. And if we come together, if we hold hands and start supporting each other more, we're actually a massive movement. Even if in each area of the world, it's a small percentage, when you look widely, it's actually a massive movement. So I started thinking of how can we create an event which brings people across these movements together and gets them to see the power that there is actually, we are many. And in parallel, that for 30 years, you have some gray hairs, Cormac. I have some gray hairs. I don't know how your 90s were, but I started in early 90s with the rave scene, and I've been going to different festivals since then. And it made me realize how huge a power in bringing together festival has. And in the modern age, we kind of use this for entertainment or for learning. But there is so much more power in that. And it really it got me thinking and wondering, because I've gotten to an age where I can go to maybe 1 or 2 music festivals a year, but that's all I need. But I love this experience of coming together with people in nature. And I want to do it having these kinds of conversations as we are now. And our thesis is that there is a huge value above and beyond meeting in the traditional format in a conference room in a big city, and combining this festival energy with the let's come together and make things happen energy.
Yeah, I think it's class. I think I heard the saying a few weeks ago. Now it was about permaculture, so the biggest movement that nobody's ever heard about. So if we all got together, so I like the fact that you're sort of reinforcing that as well. Can we just touch about a personal background just before we get into the gathering of tribes and all the stuff you chatted about there? Do you want to just give us a quick background in your permaculture journey or your regenerative journey, whichever one it was, sort of? Do you want to go first, Audrey?
Sure. I'm not permaculture certified, but I've been around that space for quite a while. So basically, since I moved to Portugal, I mean, my entire family works in the agriculture space. So I've been exposed to this quite a lot, and both in the traditional agriculture way, and now with a more regenerative focus in the newer generations. And yeah, when it comes to permaculture, I really got acquainted to it when I basically started living on land and building ecosystem restoration project. Got quite close in my last project to syntropic agroforestry. We had in the project I developed, we had basically a whole pillar. So we had 2 pillars. One was around community building, which you can say is also a part of the people part of permaculture, right? And the other one was really a bit more technical on the agroforestry side. So yeah, that's how I got sort of acquainted to those principles. And now with the regenerative space, I guess for me, it's a lot around, well, okay, how do we take those ethics and those principles and how do we apply them to as many spaces as possible? And how do we sort of take them further into society to deliver on the permaculture promise, right? The true permaculture here in the sense not of culture as agriculture, but as culture. So what is a permanent culture and how do we develop a human society that is more life affirming and that mimics nature more, which actually I was sort of looking a little bit, went back to my books before the podcast and looked back at, okay, what is actually, like, what are specifically those permaculture principles and what are the ethics? And the more I was reading on and the more I was sharing with my friends, the more I realized that we're just talking about the same thing, actually. And so I sort of came to this conclusion that, yeah, maybe regeneration was about this focus on the applications of the scaffolding that we have already developed with the principles and the ethics and the frameworks that exist in permaculture. Yeah.
Great stuff, Victor.
So starting with permaculture, my personal experience is short, but actually long-term and deep, because my best friend here in Portugal is a professional permaculture teacher and now a regenerative designer. So I have watched his professional journey and we've had lots of conversations about what does it mean. I've also watched his professional journey, meaning struggle of figuring out how to turn this into a career and livelihood. So I know it very intimately, but not very well in the sense that I am not a professional designer and such. And in terms of regeneration, so it's very interesting. We've had these questions of what is regeneration? What does it mean? And for me personally, I take a very wide view. And now I just think of it as regeneration is reinventing all of our ways that we are as a society. Of course, in line with these principles of being good for life, for planet, all of those things, which, as Audrey suggested, different movements use different language for, yet point at the same ethics, I guess. And my journey, I guess, started, I now think of it as exploring the matrix. In 2008, after the crash, I became interested in what is money. This thing seems to be very important. It seems to drive a lot of things, but exactly what is it? Where did it come from? How did we end up where we are? So I went on a few-year journey of learning and study and discovered that was my first kind of like, oh, wow, there's this whole world of people that have been thinking, and there's all of these alternatives, some of which are 100+ years old. There's this whole universe of people that have a completely different ecosystemic, actually, view of money. Then, as we're thinking of building an eco-village, I spent a few years learning about the learning system and unschooling and self-directed learning. And I was like, wow, there's this whole world of people that have already reinvented how we do learning. And I intentionally don't use the word education because that implies a certain paradigm. And then I spent time, I got really passionate about reinventing organizations. And there's a whole movement of teal and all of this. And for a long time, it kind of felt like I was wondering if I'm schizophrenic, because I was like, money here, learning, this, that. And then regeneration came about as an idea. And I was like, wow, I have an umbrella for all of my interests, finally.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned the money there. I remember watching the Zeitgeist movies in the 2000s. So that started me into a lot of this stuff as well. So the Gathering of Tribes, how did that come about? And how was it founded? Anyone catch it? It's an open session now, so whoever wants to talk, just talk away.
Yeah, Victor, I'll let you go since you're the source of our baby.
So as I mentioned, I think going to festivals was some of my early experiences. And after years, I realized that I wasn't there going for the music or for the drugs or for any of this. I was going there for the community and the power of coming together and the sense of unity. So that's been there with me throughout my whole life, from my young years. And then being in this ecosystem, I've always been, I guess maybe because I'm an anarchist, I'm frustrated with talks and like just people. I love talking with people. I love being in circle. I love workshops. I love co-creating, but just sitting and listening to one person talk doesn't feel like a generative use of time. Not that I don't love to listen to people talk, but that's what I have YouTube for. If I'm together in a person with a room full of people, then I would love to interact. So I've been frustrated with those kinds of events. And it feels like many people agree, and throughout all kinds of different professional and other environments. And yet somehow we keep on repeating on a loop the same old format for how we come together. And then there was observing the ecosystem and seeing, like I said, there is so many people doing amazing work, but they're struggling, and there feels like there's fragmentation. And if only people talked together a little bit more and supported each other a little bit more, it feels like we would be so much more powerful as a movement. And these ideas kind of came together. And then before COVID, a friend invited me to do a festival around regenerative village building. So we did it first online, and then there were 2 in person. And out of that, I came with a very strong feeling and realization that, first of all, I'm really interested in connecting much more widely, not just regenerative village building, but these many spheres. And second of all, I really do not want to do something that's top-down programmed. I want to create a festival which is all about bottom-up emergence and co-creation, because that's much more interesting to me. And then 2 years ago, I turned 50, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I was searching because it was clear to me I wanted to do a festival in nature. It was clear to me that doing an event first time and not doing everything for the first time, handling everything on the land would be too much. I was like, can I find a partner, somebody that understands the land-based pipe, toilet paper, and all of those things, which are very pedestrian, but completely fundamental to people having a good experience. And through the universe brought me to Audrey and the project that she was working at.
Right.
Segue. Yeah. Just to add to that, I mean, Victor, you often bring in this idea of events as spaces to experience and experiment with different forms of human culture. And for me, this is, I think, something that I've been playing with for a big chunk, if not most of my, not life, but career, let's say, which I think is really core to the gathering. I think there's huge value in events. I don't really like the word events. Spaces for me is more meaningful. Because it can be a space with, 3 people coming together for a couple hours or 5,000 for a couple days. It doesn't really matter the format. I love to see them as microcosms. And I think there's a lot of playfulness that is very serious in them. And it's how we try to approach the gathering as this fun work or serious play. Which is sometimes, to explain it to people, I just say, okay, imagine you were a child and you were given 5 days to reinvent everything about your life, about the world, about you, the way you relate to other people, about how you say hello, about whether you look at them in the eyes or not, about how you share food, how you cook it, where you talk about how you create projects, how you invent and how you create your reality. And this is what an event is, more or less, right? Within certain boundaries and constraints. And I think in this, there is so much beauty and so much power. It's very potent as a space. And so in this, for me, there is a lot of respect in terms of the production and the creation of such an event, because yeah, it's serious. It can have a lot of implication, beautiful or not. But also I love the fact that we're opening this space for everyone to co-create, right? So as the organizing team of the gathering, I often say that our only role is to create those constraints and those boundaries, or this frame within which everyone will come and play. And then for me, honestly, if people come in and they have made the experience of one thing that has truly changed the way they relate to the world, to other, and to themselves, and they have the ability, they want to bring this one thing into their life, great, mission accomplished. And if 700 people from the regenerative space do that, I think it can be a very beautiful lab, right? Human size, co-created research lab. Yeah.
So just to make it clear for the audience, what is the Gathering of Tribes instead of the nuts and bolts? So me as an individual wants to go, or somebody wants to organize a camp. How does it work?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it back down to the ground. I'll get us started, and then Victor, maybe you can add things. So we're inspired by the original principles of Burning Man, which is why we keep referring to camps. So the idea is that organizations will create a camp at the gathering, and the camps will be creating the program. So we have no centralized program. We're not inviting speakers. There's no keynotes. Every camp is bringing in their own program. And this program is based on their needs, what they want to bring forward, what they're proud of, the challenges they have. So for example, a group of permaculture teachers may want to come together and create a camp. And they may want to, I was discussing of this idea with a friend yesterday, they may want to offer a intro to permaculture program over the 5 days of the festival. This is what they want to offer, and this is their gift. And then they may think, well, we love permaculture, but we're struggling to make a living out of it. what is not working there, which will then be a call either to offer a session around this topic and invite the support and the advice of other people, either to go out there and visit all the other camps. We're planning to have between 25 and 40 camps at the gathering and see what they have to offer. So when you think about the gathering, you have to imagine this village, each camp focusing on a certain theme or topic of regeneration, from regenerative finance to art, through permaculture and learning or unlearning. And people will buy tickets into one of the camps. So there's no open tickets. Everyone is sort of attached to the culture of a camp in the gathering. So if you go on our website, you will see basically a list of camps with the description of who those people are, what they want to offer, who they're inviting into their camp, and you choose to buy your ticket into any one of the camps. So that's for individuals. If you're really excited about the opportunity and you have a group of people who you would love to create a camp with, then you sign up as a camp and we have a conversation with you and we make it happen.
Great stuff.
So if I may add to that, you can think of it as a mashup between a trade show, where you go as an organization or a company to represent yourself, and a festival. It's very much about celebration also. So I think we are all agreed we want to be more holistic. So don't just bring the brainy stuff. Every organization has people who are yoga teachers, meditation teachers, DJs. It's about creating a holistic event. So expressing also the human side of your organization. And I like to jokingly say, don't ask what you can do for the gathering, ask what the gathering can do for you. So I really invite organizations to think within what they're trying to achieve within their strategy. Do they need more clients? Do they need build team members, community? Understand, as Audrey suggested, understand how they should develop themselves as an organization, to think of how being in a group of 600 regenerative, smart, motivated people who are building organizations, how can you use that incredible brain power and energy to support what you're trying to do with your organization?
And so if I go to a certain camp and our camp seems better and they're having a better time, can I sneak over and can you mix amongst the camps, or is that you in the camp for the week?
No, of course it's you can mix. Camps are will have open and private events. So I imagine the bulk of it will be things that are open and everybody's invited to. There will be an app for the schedule, so you can see what's going on where. But it's also a big experiment. So it's an invitation for all of us to think of what is the event, the festival, the gathering that our ecosystem needs to make us stronger, more resilient, and thriving.
Yeah. Sorry for bringing it down to the nuts and bolts. That's the engineer in me. How does it work? It couldn't be any more clear now. So this isn't the first event, is it?
It's the second.
Second. So any big takeaways from the first event? Any like good examples of positive stuff happening there?
Yeah, I can start. I think the first one was really interesting. I think so as Victor said, I was just involved in supporting from the ground logistics there. So I kind of observed it from the outside as well, which was fascinating. I would say the key learnings were, the first one is actually that it's very important for everyone to be attached or to be part of a tribe. Because in the first event, actually, we had open tickets. So some people could come as a camp, but also anyone could just join the gathering. And it was really interesting in terms of the culture that it created or that it didn't create. And as the way I perceived it, there was a bit of, I don't have the word for it, but it sort of created these two levels in the events between the camps and those who are here as individuals. And so it was really important for us to sort of bring everything down to the same level by having those camp tickets only. So that was an interesting learning in terms of the culture also and how it works, right? Like in real life, in the tangible world, in terms of tickets and so on. Victor, do you want to go? There's loads, but
yeah. So that was another way. The way I like to describe it is, we want everybody to be part of a camp. So even though, I mean, 600-700 people, it's not a huge event, but it's still a large enough number of people that you can get lost in the crowd. But this way, we want to make sure that everybody has this small human experience and a sense of belonging to a human-sized group, as well as being part of the bigger festival. I think that was huge. What else? I mean, it's a good idea. I think that's the huge learning was that enough people are excited and motivated, and Audrey became my partner after that. So I think also, I mean, it's a small, but you're an engineer, it's a technical detail. We were trying to have food pre-organized. There was one camp that was organizing that, and there was a community kitchen, and that turned out to be more trouble than it's worth, which I actually kind of thought so upfront. I go to festivals, and I know in a festival, when you're running around, you're walking around, sometimes you only eat once a day, or like regular meals at the same time are not ideal for many people. So now we're going to have standard festival vendors. You can buy food and eat when you want.
the council.
And also there was it's oftentimes through the challenging things that you have epiphanies and interesting things emerge. As always, in any neighborhood, when there is a celebration, there is somebody who plays music too late, too loud. And there was a group, people were asking, and there was one group that was playing music more loudly and longer than was desired, and people were complaining, and I was like, well, what do we do? And at one point, somebody came up to me. It's not too late, 1 a.m., but still late enough. Somebody came up to me somewhat irate and said, "You're the organizer. Aren't you going to do something about it?" And it was one of those epiphany moments. I haven't had many epiphanies, but I had this white flash of epiphany where my whole body said, no, you are not going to put me in this position of pedestal power, control, judge, jury, police. I was like, no. And one of those brilliant moments sometimes you get in life when the perfect comeback comes in the moment. I looked at him and I went, they're your neighbors. You go talk to them. Because I realized, right, what are we trying to create here? We're not trying to repeat the old system where we have a problem with your neighbors, you call the cops, right? We're trying to create a world where if you have your problem with the neighbors, you go talk to them. At the same time, it made me realize that, okay, we're having a group of people and a growing group of people. There does need to be somebody, a rule making, and somebody that people can complain to. But I was like, it's not going to be me. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm lazy or whatever. It's just that it's really important for me that that's not the dynamic we're trying to create. The dream is to support the emergence of a co-creative ecosystem. And of course, there's certain things which are required by law, like fire rules or whatever. I have absolutely no qualms about imposing those with an iron fist, because that's safety and it's legal. But somebody being inconvenienced about not being able to go to sleep early enough, as an ecosystem, if we don't learn, if we can't even sort this out, how are we ever going to coordinate on anything more important? So out of this came the inspiration to have a council of the gathering. Audrey.
Before you go there, I'd be finding that. I'd the one looking for the music at 1 in the morning. That
So
would attract
they
me.
were alone, right? There was a whole bunch of
uh,
people having a great party, except some other people weren't,
Sorry, Audrey, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it brings in this idea of the ecosystem literally, right? Which means everyone has their role and function and how that works in real life. Yeah, no, the console. So I guess what came out of it, as Victor was saying, is this idea that, yeah, we don't want to recreate top-down hierarchical structures. However, we do recognize the importance and need for tools, which I see as, again, the scaffolding that holds the structure together. And so the council, for those who know, we call it the Council of the Gathering, inspired by Ways of Council, which is a circle basically, which is held in order to solve conflicts, let emergence happen, facilitate dialogue, sometimes make decisions. And so the Council of the Gathering is the circle which is made up of people from each camp. Can be the camp leaders, can be someone else that's been elected by their camp, which will be held every day during the 5 days of the gathering and before, actually during the pre-builds, 5 days before the gathering, to act as the space, right, as this container for all those conversations to happen in the most healthy, I guess, way possible. It's a big experiment, and it's going to be fascinating to see whether there's appetite for it, right? Whether people decide to show up for it or not, and how it happens. The idea is that there will be the main council, and that if there is any specific challenge, there will be smaller council circles that will be facilitated as well. And we will see where it goes from there, basically. The one thing that is established is that the council or the councils will be held and facilitated by what is called in the space a council carrier, which is, in our case, this beautiful human being who's been a council carrier for 20 years and who's been hosting those circles around. Yeah. So we're basically, I think, to put it simply, trying to find this soft spot and this balance between, yes, we do recognize that scaffolding is important in certain cases, and how do we utilize this knowledge without recreating the dynamics that we know exist in today's society that we're trying to move away from.
Yeah, I think if you solve that problem, you'll be definitely worth an award, because it's come up a lot in a lot of permaculture conversations I've had recently, and that projects fail because of people. But as well, I think it's really good you're bringing these people together. So if you bring 700 people together and one or two complain, that's quite good. So on a positive note, you're bringing all these people together and building relationships. And I know for me, working remotely, it would be great to come and meet some of my European teammates. So I'm beginning to work now with another 2 designers on trying to sort of build a European permaculture company. So it'd be cool if the 3 of us could go there and meet in person. And
yeah, so this is exactly, as a organization, there's many, it's sometimes hard to describe, because I really think that the gathering is a Swiss Army knife of gatherings, right? And definitely it's a great way to use it is as a team gathering. Team, collaborators, etc. We know we should meet, and for smaller, bigger organizations are able to organize their own events and so on and so forth, but it's a hassle, and also people hard to find the time. But in this context of a bigger festival and also presenting the organization, I hope it's easier for many people, it'll be easier to get the team together. So very much like I said, I've been working for 18-20 years remotely, so I have a very strong feeling of how needed it is to come together in person, and creating an excuse for these distributed organizations to come together is definitely one of the motivations.
Yeah, and I see the price is quite reasonable as well for an individual.
€100 per person is sort of what we have as a festival ticket price. Victor is making a face. The camp prices will be slightly higher, and they will vary basically, because you can imagine if each camp has its own small events. meaning we take our 100 euro fee, but then if, for example, you want to organize a permaculture camp, and actually you do want to pay yourself something for the coordination fee, and you want to rent out some basic infrastructure, you can do that, and then your ticket price will go up, whatever, 20, 30, 100 euros, right? So you sort of hold your budget, and if you go on the website, you will see all those different camps with all those different ticket prices, but it's quite low, yes.
Yeah, I have enough going on this year to organize. I'll pass on that, but it would be good. I've seen a couple of camps here that I was interested in, and that's what I like as well. There's the different camps. There's a varied degree of interest as well, so you'll find your camp, I think, that suits you. Yeah. So that's great about the camp. Do you want to talk about the regenerative movement in general and what's sort of happening in the space? Any thoughts or words of wisdom there?
I don't know about wisdom. That's the $100 question. What's happening in the regenerative movement? I can start. I mean, first of all, I think maybe the reason why I'm starting like this is because it's not that easy to talk about the regenerative movement. First of all, I've switched from talking about movement to talking about ecosystem, which is much more accurate, given how I understand regeneration. Secondly, I think it's not that easy to talk about it because it's quite vague, meaning in the way I see it, because of its very holistic and systems level nature, it includes a lot of things, and therefore it's quite hard to catch, right? It is by definition this sort of open box that a lot of things get thrown into. That being said, I think it's a super interesting space. I often describe it these days as a bubbling sourdough starter. That's like at its infancy and is really exciting, and there's a lot of life in it. And I see the applications of regeneration as, well, what kind of bread are you going to make with it, right? And it's where the gathering comes in as well. So for me, what's interesting there is, well, also comparing it to permaculture, is that at the moment that I'm aware of, regeneration is not defined by a commonly agreed set of principles or ethics. I mean, you guys have your 12 principles, you have the Bibles, you have the OGs of permaculture, and I don't think there is this yet in regeneration. And so I tend to describe regeneration more as this action towards, as this movement, rather than as an established scaffolding or framework. And so that's why we have at the permaculture camps for regenerative arts and regenerative organizations and leadership and ecosystem restoration and many, many different things, right? What I get particularly excited about these days in the regen space is anything related to complexity science. Victor is getting tired of listening to me talking about it. But if you don't know about it, check out the work of Dave Snowden, particularly for complexity science. And he comes at it from a regenerative organizations and leadership perspective, but for me, it's really, it can be applied to everything and anything. And in it, there is really this idea again of movement and of dialogue. So meaning if we understand that we live in complex systems, and that basically, to summarize it, anything that is human is complex, then how do we change the way we interact with this very entangled mess or mass of things, right? And so it's an approach that's very much based on emergence and on our capacity as human beings to adapt. What is the next best thing that I can do? What is a story that I want to repeat? What is a story that I don't want to repeat? So it's sort of simplifying everything to take into account the complexity of our systems. So we tend as humans to overcomplicate. How do we stop doing that? So I found this was a super valuable approach in my everyday life, and then yeah, really excited about it. And I'll stop there. I could keep talking for hours, but yeah, Victor, over to you.
So for me, it's very easy to talk about it. It's amazing. I've spent in trying to, or in inviting people, I've spent the last 6-8 months just going around LinkedIn, connecting. I think I've added 1,500 people over the last 8 months. And I spend every day just going around LinkedIn, clicking on people's profiles and it's just mind-blowing reading people's profiles, the amazing things that are happening, ecosystem restoration, circular economy, bringing nature into this, into that. It's just so beautiful. And for me, the regenerative, I like to joke that regeneration means keeping on asking the question of what is regeneration. I think that is the true regeneration. And the second we stop asking the question is, that's when it stops, because it's got to be a living thing. But things like DAOs from the Web3 space, circular economy, there's a whole world working on regenerating, restoring the oceans, biophilic design. It's incredible. Like, of course, we are all in our own bubble, but I've really extended the bubbles, and there's so many amazing things happening. I think this is a really exciting time to live in, because there is more and more things happening, more and more money moving into this space, and actually, interestingly enough, big money. I think even more than small or medium money. Like, for example, I'm working on a village project, and it's been really tough getting funding. And now I've had more and more conversations where people are like, when you have a project of 20 to 100 million euros, then we can talk, because this is the investors that are interested in investing in regenerative real estate. I was like, oh, wow, interesting. Okay. And I've had this conversation 3 or 4 times now with completely different parties. So I think it's really exciting, because there is, as Audrey said, a lot bubbling, more and more things happening, but it's incredibly open. So you can find and create your space. Of course, this is very frustrating, because you need to find and create, you need to create a space. It's not like we have fixed boxes for professions and such. Yeah, it's really exciting times, and it's really incredible because it's global, right? Like last week, I had a conversation around all of these topics with a guy who was from Russia building a village in Montenegro, and says like, yeah, I'm a post-growth philosopher, but philosophy doesn't pay, so I build villages and they set up a school. And then half hour later, I talked with another guy that's it's originally from China, living in Thailand, set up a festival of thousands of people, writing books about this stuff. Very similar conversation and similar references, right? So it's a global movement. I think we are starting to see the positive benefit of the internet at really spreading ideas, knowledge, and now also connecting for action.
Yeah, that's definitely, if you need anybody for them, any permaculture designers for them 20 million euro projects, you hit me up. For definite. And yeah, the internet's definitely very powerful. A lot of my all my connections are basically online in the permaculture movement. And I wouldn't have been able to do like remote designs and stuff without internet and technology. So for a permaculture person, one last thing, why would they go to the Galerna tribes?
So, I mean, I can speak to that, and actually I'll speak first to your question of the permaculture designer for the whatever million project. I need your help and the ecosystem's help to redefine the design process so it's clear at which point the regenerative permaculture designer fits in. Because we don't have this process defined. You're based in the UK, I guess, right?
Yeah, Northern Ireland.
So I know in the UK has the rebus stages of development, right? It's clearly mapped out who comes in and does what at which stage. How do we do this in the regenerative space? I was struggling with this, right? I have investors, but I need to convince people And I know from me that I need the regenerative permaculture designer early on, but how do they relate to the architect? How do they relate to the other people? As a permaculture designer, if you want to be part of the project, help me write this story at the start so I can get the investment and so I can bring in. So, and that connects with, as a permaculture designer, why will it be useful is to figure out how you fit into the bigger ecosystem and how you can get a seat much earlier at the table when the project is being defined, when the project is being concepted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely does. And it's conversations we've been having with my designer partners in Italy and France. Sort of started them processes. How can we sort of start getting involved in them conversations, basically, and position ourselves better? Particularly focused on Europe, because we've been doing mostly American designs. Plus, too, I done an ESG course recently. I know it's the big bad word in America in some quarters, but it was basically the money that the European Union has for the funding for ESG, the reporting and regenerative projects. The companies are looking to do this now in Europe to improve their credentials.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the other thing, right? It's because I'm kind of a developer, learning to be a developer. We need to learn about the metrics, right? And as a designer, okay, it's great. We permaculture, biodiversity, regeneration, but like the investors will always say, show me the numbers. And fair enough, right? Between the projects, we need to create some kind of standards. And I know it's very hard to measure, and yet we must measure, right? So there is so many wider areas outside of just the mere design that I think permaculture designers have great wisdom and ability to bring to, but they need to really understand what the needs are of that part of the world, of the problem space, world, business.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have a conversation later on. That would be great. I'd love to get involved in that. Guys, any final thoughts? Anything we missed out? Any sort of things you want to leave us with?
No, for me, just thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to seeing your permaculture camp coming alive in September.
Well, thanks very much. Any final words, Victor?
I mean, this is the start of a journey, and we're on this journey together. As Audrey likes to say, there aren't many projects. There is only one project. We're all working on the one project together.
Wise words. Guys, thank you very much. And for audience, I definitely recommend checking out the Gather the Tribes website, seeing where you fit in and if you can get along. I think it'd be a great experience. And I think meeting people face to face is a lot stronger as well. Strengthen those bonds, meet new people. And for permaculture,
in nature, we talk about nature sitting together under a tree.
Yeah, and particularly for permaculture people, getting out of that permaculture bubble and seeing where you fit in the greater ecosystem